Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Reiki Den. My name is Jack. I am the Reiki Witch, the Word Witch. Take your pick. Either one is good, but on here it is the Word Witch. So thank you again for joining me here. I do appreciate all of you joining me. This is today's co-host. So her name is Beans. Technically it's Coffee Bean, right? Technically it's Coffee Bean. But we just call her Beans for short, and we actually thought she was a male. So her name is not going to change. It's going to stay exactly the way that it is. But yeah, she's the newest addition to our little family here at the Den. So just since she was here, I thought I'd introduce you guys all to her. Yeah, so there's that. So today I just wanted to chat a little bit. I have this tendency to film video after video after video, and they just never seem to get posted. So I've probably done 50, 60 videos in the last year that just never seem to make it onto my channel. So the point today is to just do something that is fun and just allows me to babysit, because, grandbabies are out there. So if I do need to get up and run at the drop of a hat, that would be why. There's two small children behind me in the living room that I can see. Oh, there goes the light on. Okay, and I'm very sorry about the screaming. I will be honest, I am terrible at the actual, editing out of things. I can, stitch clips together, and I can add, an intro and an outro, but when it comes to actually editing things out, like the screeching or shouting of my granddaughter, I don't know how to do that. So I may or may not be able to get that out of there, but if I don't, that's why. So I guess that's something I need to work on moving forward, is proper editing in my videos. So anyways, so the reason that I decided that I just wanted to chat today, rather than coming up with an actual topic, is because I'm having, okay, so let me back this up a little bit, okay? We all know I work full time. Okay, we've covered that before. I also have my own business, which is the Reiki Den, where I do Reiki sessions, Reiki healing, and I do tarot readings and oracle readings, and I lead ritual and write spells for people. And I don't do them for people, but I do write them for people. Then there's the other side of my life where everything is mundane, and that would be, my regular. It's literally an 8 to 5 Monday to Friday, and I get home and I'm exhausted because I'm dealing with people all day that aren't necessarily the most cheerful, not always, and it's very draining, and I have a hard time after those days continuing to put together much of a coherent thought, let alone being able to stick to a specific topic for a video. Now, that said, this is a Sunday, so I have not been working today. I'm just hanging out here with my grandkids and just, doing the home thing, and I decided that I wanted to say hello. So I've spent 3 minutes rambling just to say, hey, how's it going? So oh my goodness. Okay. So in actuality, I did have a couple of things that I wanted to actually kind of bring up that don't really fit within some of the other topics that I've been covering. Specifically, I wanted to look at things like grimoires and the Book of Shadows and a Book of Mirrors, a Book of Lights, if you will. It depends. It really depends on who you are, what you call it. But they do have similar yet different purposes, right? So your Book of Shadows is kind of like kind of like a recipe book for a witch, right? So this is where you're going to put all of your references, like tarot references, as an example. That's always something that I start mine with, is, whatever tarot that I'm working with, the keywords or images or different readings that I've done. I keep a kind of a mini log in there. Components for spells that I use frequently, like if I'm using rose in a lot of my spells at this particular time, then I'm going to have rose in there. If I'm using sage for a lot of different things, I'm going to have the different purposes that I'm using sage for at that time. And it's all very specific to in this moment, right? So I'll keep things like planetary hours and a little tiny bit of astrology information. And I say that because I'm not actually an astrologer. So all I have is the basic information, the same as pretty much anybody else that is not an astrologer would have. I have a bit of an understanding of it that I gained from my best friend, because she is an astrologer, and she dabbles in it. It's not a professional thing for her, but she loves it. So whenever I have a question that's astrology based, I go to her. I don't have to really worry about it as much on my own as I need to go research this. I just kind of reach out to her and just be like, hey, I need some help here. And, she'll give me the information and then we'll talk about it. And then whatever's, necessary, I end up adding to my Book of Shadows. I'll be completely honest with you. My very first Book of Shadows, I no longer have. Which really does upset me because it was, no word of a lie, it was a 4-inch binder. I had actually had a separate, I had my Book of Shadows that was a continuously growing, always being added to book that almost had a life of its own at this point. And then another 1.5-inch ring binder that was my spell book, that had all of the spells that I had written and used and tweaked. I had other people's spells in there as well, but just things that I had changed were, marked in there and what have you. And so I moved and they somehow got lost in the shuffle and I lost all of it. I both volumes went missing. So I've been kind of working on rebuilding that, but I have less incentive, less drive, I guess, to actually create an actual Book of Shadows. So instead, I'm moving more towards a personal grimoire. 1 second. So sorry about that. I'm allergic to the cat, so there might be a little bit of sneezing in here. So what I started doing initially was I had kind of borrowed an idea from a YouTuber that I was watching for a while, and she took a hardback copy of a random book. It didn't matter what it was, and she used those pages to actually let me see here, actually create new pages. Okay, so I'm not the most creative person when it comes to some of this stuff, so I don't have as much in here as I would like, but I do have a list of the tarot decks that I had at the time that I started this, and I had 34 at that time. I did have more after that. And then I have a list of the different pages that I wanted to include in my grimoire. Writing things in there that could be only read with a mirror, or illustrating different components of a spell. So instead of just saying the word sage, I could draw sage leaves. Making sure to include things like my sun, moon, and rising signs. Using stamps or stickers, things to highlight the different books. Kind of scrapbooking it, but within an actual bound book. And the book I was using was actually a novel. It was one that I had read multiple times and really appreciated the book, but I knew that I wasn't going to read it again. So I was using that book. And when we moved into this particular house, I ended up, it got damaged. And so I've rescued some of the pages that were in there. So like some information on the different elements. Now, of course, I've left some space so that I can add to it as I go. And then I had, oh, here, let's start putting these down as I'm looking at them here. I had, I don't know where the first page to that one went. Goodness, I might have. And see, this is why I like need to organize myself a little bit more. Like, holy. Okay, so it says 12th house at the top of here. See, like right there, it says 12th house. And then I had like the planetary symbols and some, Halloween themed washi in there. Some uses for black salt as well as a recipe to create that. Let's see. Oh, there's some more houses. That's 6 to 11, which means this should be astrology notes. There's the rest of them. And then zodiac symbols and a primary trait of each one of them. And then I had which is not, and a description of what it is and how it actually works, and even like a little charm that you could say when using it for house protection. And then a fairy star as well, because I had a pendant that was a fairy star. So I wanted to make sure I included that information. I have a list of herbs, but I'm not... Oh, it said basic herbs, but as you can see, it did get damaged, so it was hard to see. And the papers are all wrinkly. Now, you can see with this one, you can actually see the page from the book. So this was actually, with a lot of my pages, what I did was actually glued down like a regular white, like a computer paper, this blank paper, over top of the pages. Simply because I am impatient and I actually ran out of white paint and I ran out of gesso. So like writing them down and like doing all the work that I wanted to do was just a little bit harder when I was waiting for paint and gesso to dry, so I just continued on. So I do have some runes here as well, and again there's some witchy themed washi tape going on there. There is the rest of the runes, and I've got it set up as like an alphabet. I don't really write with the runes as an alphabet. I actually use them for divination, but it actually doesn't hurt to have them that way. And I was going to add the divination information into it as well, but I just didn't get that far. That was just different. What was this one? Let me see. Oh, things that I would need for different herbal preparations. Like wide mouth jars and bottles, a mortar and pestle, olive oil, different essential oils, apple cider vinegar, vodka for setting it so that it didn't go bad, incense, muslin, some non-aluminum cooking pots, just basic things for working with herbs if you wanted to do like your own herbal mixes, or if you wanted to do like a simmer pot, you wouldn't need any of that stuff. And then the beginning of the tarot record that I was making. So as you can see, I've got different keywords here. It's listed under keyword, and of course this is the Fool. Okay. And then on the other side of that, I actually have a list of the oracle decks that I had at the time as well. So between the two of them, I had 35, 40, 46 different decks at the time. And I have almost none of those decks now. So that's just a little bit of some of the information. 1 second. Oh, I'm falling off my chair. Sorry. So just a little bit of the information that I had actually been including in my grimoire in my Book of Shadows as I had been creating it. And now I'm kind of moving more towards the concept of a grimoire. And just for the record, there actually was a lot more pages than this. But there were so many that were damaged that I wasn't able to save a lot of them. So unfortunately, because I couldn't save a lot of them, I did lose a lot of that work. So this is going to be the new version of that. So it is covered with stickers. It does underneath there say Book of Shadows. It was a gift to me by my daughter. This is actually like a printed version. It was published by Sterling Ethos. And I'm not seeing the author's name, although there is an author. I want to say Cassandra Eason, but I could very well be wrong on that. But it's got this like leather look cover, right? You can see the back of it here. So it's just a smooth. It is purple, although it's hard to see in this light. I'm not sure how well I could show that off, but it is purple. So I didn't like the cover the way that it was, so it is covered with stickers because why not? I was given a bunch of witchy themed stickers. So, you know, there's elixirs and there's butterflies and there's a crow and there's a bottle full of ghosts and Halloween and palmistry, witch's brew, just, you know, really witchy themed. And then when you open it up, I actually, the inside, well, I'll show you what the inside more or less looked like. So this is basically what you had. Okay, just the gold kind of splatter there. So in the front here, I actually colored them all in, and it's not very good. It looks like garbage, but it's all elemental colors except for the browns in the center. And I was kind of starting to see different images in here. Like I can see a butterfly here, right? And this looks like a heart with lungs around it. And this could be a womb, you know, like I was starting to see images in there, and I'm covering that because it does actually have my the rest of my name, so it's okay. But there is a cute little crow skull here, or crow skull sticker. So it seemed like a good idea to put it in there. And then when you go through it a little bit further, the inside of the book is basically completely pre-printed. So there's like an introduction, there's some information on different types of spells and different color correspondences, like the colors are here. You know, it's just colors as candles, flowers, crystals, colored purses to contain herbs, magic, or charms for magic or healing, and so on. So, you know, white, red, orange, blah, 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 all the way through. There's some tips for spell casting. There's magical herbs and flowers, incenses, trees, you know, basic correspondences. So I decided to leave those because that way I don't actually have to add those in later, right? So it saves me a little bit of work. So then I added this sticker here. I'm not going to color in this page. I'm going to leave that one as is. And then I created my own little cover page, and of course I got, you know, Loki going on there because why would you not want Loki in your, you know, Book of Shadows? I still haven't decided if that's a good idea or not, but I guess we'll see. And then, you know, you got your copyright information and what have you through there. So that's where I just kind of skipped ahead. And there's a good, it's about 20 pages worth of information that you don't have to do. And then the rest of the book looks like this. So it has this blank page on one side and then the line on the other side. And it does make a really good option, like, and they're dated, so you can treat it as like an actual journal, or if you wanted to write down like spell results, for example, you could include the spell information on, you know, the blank side if you wanted, and then you could write it like a journal entry, you know, afterwards. You leave it blank, and like 6 months later or a month later, or, you know, whatever you need, you just go ahead and fill in the results on that particular spell and how it worked for you. So it does really work out in a way that I appreciate. So I'm quite happy with the way that is turning out. And the very first things that I'm adding in here are my sun sign, which, you know, obviously I'm a Leo. And my moon sign has not been added yet, but it is Cancer, in case you were curious. And then my rising will go here, and also, in case you're curious, that is Sagittarius. So I'll add those three in near the beginning, just to include that little bit of my birth chart into my book as I go. So that way I have that reference to my outward self, my inward self, and how those affect me in my day-to-day life, all kind of included at the beginning. And I didn't want to add my moon or rising signs in until I had actually filled out Leo, because I wanted to make sure I had enough space. I don't want to be just writing keywords in that. I want to actually include something like my impressions of my iteration of Leo, right? Because we're all a little bit different. Like me, and if you look at myself as a Leo, you look at my oldest son, who is also a Leo, we are very, very similar in a lot of ways, but we're also very, very different. And the way that our Leo traits present are very different. So I will be completely honest, I don't know his moon and rising off the top of my head. I would have to go back and look at his birth chart. I've got all of my kids' birth charts. I have my grandkids' birth charts as well as my partner and my stepdaughter, with permission from my partner and stepdaughter, of course. But I have all of them, and it helps me to kind of look at the differences and similarities and how we all kind of mesh and how we all are different. So I like having that information. But that's not information that would go into this book. All right, that's actually information I would put into my grimoire, as opposed to my Book of Shadows. My Book of Shadows is going to be more like a working journal of the different spells that I'm doing, different tarot spreads that I'm working on. Like if I'm learning a new spread or if I'm creating a new spread, the different information that I would be using for those things would go into there. Like I have the recipe for black salt. Well, black salt is definitely something I'm going to be using regularly, but I also am looking at that recipe and thinking, what if I tweak it a little bit and do this instead of that? And how would that work? So the Book of Shadows is somewhere that I would be able to keep that information. Like I've got this black salt recipe, but now I've substituted this for that, and how does that work? How do I feel that it worked? And I can include that kind of record of progress as I go through it. If I'm working on a spell and I'm working to perfect it, that kind of information is going to be included in my actual Book of Shadows. So that's where that starts. Now, I don't have my grimoire at this time. I don't have a grimoire at this time. And I really do want to begin a grimoire. And the reason for that is, for me, is pretty easy. All right. I've been at this now for, when I say at this, I have been pagan. I have been a witch in some variation for about 3/4 of my life. Okay. I wasn't raised that way as a small child, but I was introduced to witchcraft at 11 by a family member. And, well, my grandmother. I not exactly, but it was like she was the one that brought me into the New Age section of the bookstore and kind of introduced me to that whole world of things. And the very first thing that I pulled off the shelf for myself was a book of spells. And that was kind of what did it for me. So, I mean, I've told that story in another video, so I don't want to go back into that. But, I mean, it's really been something I've been doing 3/4 of my life. And so I feel like at this time, a grimoire is something that I should have been doing, but I guess I didn't feel like I was really ready for that. And that is kind of like your reference book. All right. So, for example, I'm going to have a grimoire that has my birth chart in it. It's going to have my keywords for, no, I probably wouldn't even use keywords in there. Although I might have some information on like numerology, just basic information. I might include in-depth information on numerology. I don't know. Depends on how I would be feeling. But I would include reference material like how to use the gematria in Jewish magic, different tenets of Kabbalah, which I study, how to incorporate tarot, for example, into my Reiki my Reiki practice, or how to incorporate Reiki into my tarot practice, because they would technically be a little bit different, right? Because it depends on which one's the focus. I would include things like the method that I use to do shamanic journeying, which I also do. I do shamanic Reiki, so that's part of the practice, right? And so, like, including that, or like if I was working with the Zohar, which is Kabbalah again, I would be able to write down like which version of it I was reading and which one I was using, and what kind of studies I was putting into it. Along those same lines, I would be able to incorporate the Hebrew alphabet, which I do actually want to add, because each of their letters is a mystical creation in and of itself. It has its own power outside of the words, but when you use those symbols to create a word, you're adding like all these layers and layers and layers of meaning to it that is far beyond the dictionary definition. So that's the kind of thing that I would incorporate into my grimoire. So it becomes a reference. It's not really something that you want to be modifying the pages. Like if you wanted to say take Metatron's cube and add that in there and an explanation of like what that symbol actually consists of, then you can do so within your grimoire. But if you are looking at like some of the different things or you can add in there as well, like some of the different things that you can do with a Metatron's cube. But you can also include in your Book of Shadows the different things that you are trying to see how effective it is doing this, this, and this. So both books kind of work together. So your grimoire ends up being like your reference book, and your Book of Shadows ends up being kind of like your workbook or a working journal of like everything that you've done and how it's working and what you're doing to change things and to fix things and modify things. So that's kind of how they fit together. And then I mentioned as well a book of lights and a book of mirrors. In my way of seeing, like of viewing that, they are actually the same thing. I like the term, the name Book of Mirrors better, because it's a book of reflection. It's a journal that you keep throughout the year that allows you to reflect on everything that you're doing and everything that you're experiencing from a magical perspective. So as an example, going back to Kabbalah, just because it's something that I'm actively studying at the moment. So if I decide that I want to incorporate this what was the phrase that he used? It was stop. It was like stop and say yes. That wasn't what it was. I would have to go back and actually like look at it again. But it was just using this phrase to like stop and make yourself just pause in the moment and reevaluate very, very quickly. Am I reacting or am I acting? Like is what I'm doing under my control, or is this something that I am not controlling? And not controlling is you're reacting. Controlling, you are actively deciding how you are going to respond to such situation. The phrase was pause, what a pleasure. That's what it was. My Kabbalah teacher uses that phrase in every single one of his classes, and I think it's great. So, that's why I don't understand why I couldn't remember it. Okay, pause, what a pleasure. So the idea is that no matter what is happening to you, no matter what you are doing, no matter what you are experiencing, you're going to stop. You're going to just pause, what a pleasure. Okay, so I got this really nasty thing happening to me, right? I don't. But say, for example, I'm at work. I'm at my mundane job, my day-to-day, I'm there, and I have a very, very, very unhappy person on the phone who is cursing and swearing and just having a terrible time, and they just, they're just not having it, like barely giving you the opportunity to be able to resolve that issue for them, whatever it might be. So, as a Kabbalist, pause. You pause yourself. What a pleasure. Well, what is that pleasure? Well, the pleasure is that I am now in a position where I can help that person and I can resolve this for them. And that is a blessing that I have, that I am able to then share with that person. And for me, that's something that works. It doesn't work for everybody, and I get that, but that's the basic kind of like a day-to-day kind of understanding of it. But it is a lot more complicated than that. But that is the kind of thing that I would include in my Book of Mirrors is, hey, today I ran across blah, blah, blah. And, I said to myself, pause, what a pleasure. And this was what the pleasure was. This is how I interpreted that. And this is how it ended, and that gives me a chance to reflect on not only what I did and what was going on with that customer at that time, but also I can look back on it in 6 months when I'm not sure that I'm making the progress that I think I should be. I can sit down with that, Book of Mirrors, and I can open it up to any given page that I've written on, of course, and I can read over those entries, and I can be like, you know what? I'm not there anymore. Like I thought I was still there, but I'm over here. And I didn't know it because I didn't have that resource available to look at, right? Because all you're going by is your human memory, and human memory is flawed. So I like the idea of the Book of Mirrors, as the mirror allows it, it reflects back to you and allows you to reinterpret what's there. So I like that concept. So that's something I'm going to be working with in the new year, is working with a Book of Mirrors. And so that would give me a grand total of my Book of Shadows, which is started, right? Barely, but started. And then a Grimoire that I am working on putting together that I have not gotten done yet. And then the Book of Mirrors. And I'm good with that. I'm good with that. But there is going to be one other one. And I don't want to get into a whole lot about that one specifically at this time, just because it's going to be an ongoing, it'll be beyond this scope of like a year's use of work. Like the Book of Mirrors, for example, should be like each year you do a new one. But and I'm fine with that. But the idea of this other book that I'm going to be working through is a little bit different. And like I said, I don't want to get into it a whole lot right now. I will elaborate a little bit more down the line when things start coming together and I start getting it put together and I actually have an idea of what it's going to be for, because I know when I don't, it's like I'm waiting for that notice that says this is what you need to put in there right now, and I haven't got that yet. So we're kind of working on that. So that ended up being the topic for today, is Book of Shadows, Grimoire, and Book of Mirrors. Book of Lights, the name is, it has a similar function to Book of Mirrors. Instead of reflecting it back at you, it's eliminating it for you. So that's the biggest difference. It's kind of like the outward evidence of what goes on in your Book of Shadows, which is behind the closed doors. So that's the gist of those for today. I am going to end it here. I do want to get this edited and uploaded, if at all possible, today, so that you guys are able to actually watch this. I apologize if the light's not all that great. It seems like it's shining, right? It's just above and behind me, so the light's a little bit off, and I'm actually just noticing it now, so I'm very sorry about that. If you have any questions or comments, please, again, put them in the box below. I'm always happy to answer any questions or, chat with you guys if you're wanting that. So Don't be afraid. And in the meantime, I hope you all have a lovely, lovely weekend. And I will see you all soon. Bye.